spite of all this nonsense from the left, we are going to win. We're in the process of taking this country back, and we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
That wasn't a slip of the tongue 2 years ago. That was a promise made by Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts. And as we look at the streets of Minneapolis, the bloodless phase appears to be over. Now, most people imagine a civil war like they do a Hollywood movie, tanks in the streets and militia hiding out in the woods. Well, that's all a fantasy, and let's all pray that that remains a fantasy. The reality of the conflict here in 2026 didn't start with a gunshot. It started with a signature, and it's escalating with a purge. It began with a forensic manipulation of the law. It involved the 900-page manual known as Project 2025, a dusty law from 1807 called the Insurrection Act, and an economic implosion that is happening right now. Welcome to Clear Signal. I'm David Thompson. Today we are not looking at conspiracy theories or future predictions. We are conducting a forensic audit of the crisis unfolding in real time. Now we're going to be looking at executive orders signed, the purges happening in D.C., and the powder keg in Minnesota that threatens to ignite the entire country. So let's get started. To understand the chaos we are seeing in the news, we must first stop looking at it as politics and start looking at it as a structural engineering failure. A democracy is held up by pillars: the courts, the separation of powers, and the independence of the civil service. What we are witnessing right now is the controlled demolition of those pillars. In this video, we are breaking down the three active fronts of this conflict: the trigger, the legal mechanism the president is threatening to use against Minneapolis; second, the purge, how the restoration of Schedule F has gutted the agencies that would normally urge restraint; and finally, the flashpoint, the collision of the debt crisis and brutal immigration enforcement that has turned American cities into war zones. Now, history gives us a roadmap. From the consolidation of security forces in 1990s Yugoslavia to the events of this very week, the pattern is always the same. Legal tools intended to save the state are used to capture it. Let's look at the weapon currently on the table. The primary mechanism the White House is currently leveraging is the Insurrection Act of 1807. This is the sword hanging over Minnesota right now. Now, under normal circumstances, the Posse Comitatus Act prevents the U.S. military from acting as a domestic police force. It's the firewall between a republic and a military dictatorship. The Insurrection Act is the exception that burns that firewall down. It grants the president the unilateral authority to deploy active duty troops to suppress rebellion. Crucially, the Supreme Court has historically deferred to the president's judgment on what constitutes an insurrection. There is no requirement for the governor of Minnesota to request help. The president decides. In the hands of an administration committed to the unitary executive theory, this act has become a partisan weapon. The threat issuing from the White House is clear. If local Democratic mayors cannot, or will not, crush the protests, the federal government will send in soldiers who will. This mirrors the centralization of command seen in failing states throughout history. They don't start by shooting, they start by federalizing control. But in 2026, there is no one left in the Pentagon or the DOJ to push back against these orders. That brings us to the second mechanism, the purge. If the Insurrection Act is the gun, then the restoration of Schedule F was the removal of the safety catch. Project 2025 was the blueprint. What we are seeing this month is the execution. The president has signed the executive order restoring Schedule F, stripping civil service protection from tens of thousands of federal employees. This isn't just about trimming the fat. This is about decapitation. We are seeing a mass purge of career officials in the DOJ, the FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security. These were the institutional breaks, the nonpartisan experts who would say, "Mr. President, the order is illegal," or "This tactic will cause a riot." They are gone. They are being replaced by political loyalists vetted for allegiance to the executive, not the Constitution. Simultaneously, the administration has ended federal consent decrees. According to analysis by the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, this signals a total federal retreat from civil rights protection. It tells militarized police forces and ICE agents that the federal government will no longer hold them accountable. This removal of internal oversight is exactly why the situation in Minneapolis has spiraled so quickly. There are no brakes left on the machine. Number 3, the flashpoint. Now, we don't have to predict the future. We just need to look out the window. It's late January 2026, and this cold civil war is turning hot. Two massive pressure systems have collided. First, the economic reality, the debt wall we warned about on this channel. Interest payments on the U.S. debt have skyrocketed, forcing the government to make a choice: print money and cause hyperinflation, or enact brutal austerity. They chose austerity. Social safety nets are being slashed to pay the bondholders, creating desperate conditions in urban centers. Second, the enforcement offensive. To distract from the economic crisis and rally the base, the administration has unleashed the Department of Homeland Security under direction of Kristi Noem. ICE has adopted shock and awe tactics. We are seeing neighborhood sweeps in Minneapolis that resemble military raids. These aren't targeted arrests. They are broad-spectrum suppression tactics in immigrant communities. The result was inevitable. Minneapolis has erupted. But unlike the protests of 2020, the federal response is not hesitant. The rhetoric from the White House has categorized these protesters not as citizens exercising free speech, but as seditious elements threatening national security. This is a powder keg. The president is currently preparing to invoke the Insurrection Act to protect loyal states and restore order in Minnesota. This changes everything. If National Guard units from politically aligned states are deployed into hostile cities to enforce federal will, we are no longer in a political dispute. We are in an occupation. This narrative has split completely. To the administration, this is the restoration of law and order against chaos. To the people of Minneapolis and to the purged federal workers watching from the sidelines, this is the end of the republic and the beginning of a unitary regime. The mechanisms we discussed, the Insurrection Act, Schedule F, the weaponizing of debt, are no longer theoretical. They are the news of the day. We are standing on the precipice. Authoritarianism didn't arrive overnight. It arrived through the steady erosion of norms and now through the brute force of the state against its own cities. The question for the remainder of 2026 is not, will the conflict happen? It's, how far will it spread? If you want to stay informed as this situation develops, please consider subscribing to our channel, hit the like button, and share the video with as many people as you can. We are dedicated to documenting the blueprint as it unfolds, no matter how dark it gets. Okay, I just wanted to have this little bonus content because I needed to get this off my chest. Literally, what we're seeing in Minneapolis, Minnesota, is making America look like a third world country. Now, to many of his MAGA supporters, Donald Trump is the God. He's the chosen one. Make America great again. Of course, what it should have said was make America white again. That was the idea, right? Now, his base really comprises of a lot of crazies, America firsters, Nazis, KKK, and some of them were white evangelicals. Well, a lot of them. Over 80%, I believe, of white evangelicals voted for Donald Trump. And they might be part of those other groups as well, okay? I'm sure they have some crossover. These are the gold standard of Christians. They'll preach to you how you're going to hell. They'll tell you. They'll pull out a scripture and tell you, ooh, you're going to hell. At the same time, they believed that the murder of a 37-year-old mother of three, a 37-year-old, I believe he was an ICU nurse, is acceptable, that this was the right thing to do because these were domestic terrorists. They were protesting. I got bad news for white evangelicals and everybody else. We have a right to protest. And when abuse is taking place, we have a right to escalate as well. We have a right to go in front of people and stop cars. We have a right to prove that we are losing our freedom, that this is tyranny. Now, Donald Trump is going to use every trick in the book to try to suppress these protesters. In fact, he wants to, as I mentioned in the video, use the Insurrection Act. This is an insurrection. This is basically a protest against unwarranted brutality by a secret police force with masks. With masks. But it's not just here. It's all over the world. What else has Donald Trump done? He's chased Canada away. Canada is now selling their oil overseas. The heavy crude that Midwestern oil refineries were using to supply fuel to Midwestern towns and communities is now dried up. The price is going up because of tariffs. They're going to get hit with a 70-cent per gallon charge at least in the Midwest. And that's not just counting the Midwest. That's probably farther out. But they're also going to get hit with higher fuel bills. Why? Because he's making America great again by punishing Canada for not obeying him. You see, he went to Europe and did the same thing. He accused our allies of not fighting in the Afghan war. They stood back while we did all the heavy lifting. Well, those allies lost people there too, and there really wasn't any front lines, Donald. These were places that were dangerous no matter where you were. Now, of course, this offended Europe, but see, many of these right-wing radical Christians, many of these MAGA people, they believe that Europe is this evil entity. The globalism is evil. Donald Trump said so. We're going to destroy it. And he has. The problem is he's destroyed it, not for the rest of the world, but for us. That's right. He destroyed the global system, the rules-based order that we built back in 1945. He's destroyed that in less than a year. Less than a year, because it's good. He looked upon it and saw that it was good. Every one of those countries are now rerouting their supply chains. They're making deals with other countries, as Canada has with China and Europe. Europe just made a mega deal with India. They called it the mother of all deals. They're going to be selling cars and other material to India with very few tariffs, vice versa. This is a big deal because India never lets anybody into their country when it comes to trade. They did with Europe. This is just the beginning. Many of our former allies are now selling their U.S. treasuries that they bought as part of the reserve currency system we have. They're selling them and getting out from under them. Those treasuries, basically once sold, come back here. And that adds, eventually, in a big way, to inflation. We need our allies to buy our treasuries. We need them to. It's part of the system we built. But it's being torn down because, like God, Donald Trump saw that it was bad. And he went after him. Everybody's the enemy. Now, many of those former allies are known to have found out about a terrorist attack or troop movements. They don't trust us, so they cut us off. Cut us off. We don't need them. Well, we do. Again, it's part of the global system that we built to keep the world safe. Donald Trump doesn't care. America first, right? Well, those of you that want to say America first, let me say this. You're a greedy, selfish person. We've had a pretty high living standard here in the United States for quite a long time. Still do. But we want to tear that down and think we can go on our own. The system wasn't built that way, but that system, according to all the people I read and hear about, is collapsing. The global order is gone. See, globalization is bad. Right-wing Christians have told me that. MAGA people have told me that. It's all bad. It's evil. Everything's evil because Donald Trump said so. Don't believe any of the news because Donald Trump said it's all fake unless you listen to Fox. And many of the people in Donald Trump's cabinet came from Fox. Why? Because they're yes men, because they're right-wing, white, conservative Americans. They have no skill set. You wouldn't let them run your bake sale at the church, let alone put them in charge of a cabinet position in the White House. But this is where we're at. The worrisome thing here is that all these groups that are part of MAGA, the right-wing Christians, the America Firsters, whoever else is in those groups, they truly believe this is the right thing. This should make you pause, people. We're in deep trouble here in America. Deep. The debt is beyond imaginable. He was going to reduce it. Instead, he exponentially made it go up. And now the interest payments, as I mentioned in the video, are skyrocketing that we can barely keep up there. Our economy is in a shambles. The job market's in a shambles. Unemployment is ticking up. No one seems to care, right? So where do we go? I don't know. The 2026 election's coming up. Will it matter? I don't know. Everybody seems to have an answer, and I'm going to be honest with you from this viewpoint of mine. I don't know. When you think you're going to take Congress, you might not. The problem is we don't know who will get elected into Congress. Will they fall in line with the Democratic Party's attempt to shut this all down, or will they fall into line with Donald Trump? It can happen. They can say, hey, I'm for you. But when Donald Trump comes threatening and he comes after them and he's going to have the Justice Department go after him, they might fold like a house of cards. We don't know. But I needed to get on here and I needed to tell you this because it bothers me. Because I see on Facebook, and I don't interact much on Facebook, but when I see craziness, I sometimes now have to respond, and I probably shouldn't. And the replies I get come from people who I think just hate everybody. Hate everybody. And I think about this and what happened to American Christianity? Well, American Christianity has collapsed. It has. The churches are empty. Evangelical churches are now losing people faster than they can plug the holes, and it's good for them. They deserve this. It isn't about anything that they say it is. It's about they do not know what they're talking about. They don't. They've stuck by a guy who's been married 3 times, committed adultery on his wife while she was nursing their child. He basically was sued for sexual assault and lost. 34 felony counts that right-wing people say were all false, but when you go down the list and you investigate them, like I did, they weren't. He was guilty as the day is long. But you see, they make it up. He doesn't say anything mean. He didn't make fun of a crippled person, but you have the film and the audio that shows that he did. It was AI. I was told that that's all AI. See, we can blame everything on AI now. Whew, I had more here. I think that's enough. I will say this one last thing. Donald Trump says he plays 4-dimensional chess. They found his IQ test when he went to the military. Now, maybe that's not right. But listening to him talk and his understanding of how things work, I would say that's probably right. He's a 73 or less. So what Donald Trump does is he finds ways around the problem, either by paying somebody off, threatening them, or finding people who are smart, who enable him to do what he does, and he uses them to find ways out of the situation. And he does that legally, illegally, whatever it takes. There's always a way. He's never going to pay the piper until we, the American people, force him to pay the piper. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our videos. We want you to support us if you enjoy our videos. And I'll see you next time right here on Clear Signal.